Kia ora and welcome to Muffin Talk. This radio program is brought to you by the initiative Titipounamu, Study and Joy. Muffin Talk is a weekly radio program to which I invite guests to talk about their work and their passion for issues on community programs, social justice, Bible studies, or interfaith relations. Today I have invited Dr. Leonard Bloksberg, in short Lenny, to a Zoom recording for broadcast. Lenny, a warm welcome and hi Ramai to our radio program.
Thank you for that. Pleasure to be here.
Dr. Leonard Bloksberg is originally from the United States, but has lived in Aotearoa, New Zealand for many years. He has an MBA and extensive practical experience in executive management and as consultant of social enterprises. One of his areas of research has been the area of faith and management. Towards the end of the year, when many people meet with their friends and family, they look for a present to give their loved ones. In recent years, there are more people who are looking not just for a gift that gives joy to the receiver, but also want to support a good cause. The term social enterprise is mentioned here and there. Lenny, can you tell us more about your PPH and experience in this area of social enterprise?
Certainly, thank you. I come from a family that has a long interest in social enterprise and social justice. My great-great-grandfather was a rabbi in the Ukraine during the pogroms and was very much involved in caring for his community. My grandparents, when they went to the United States, were very involved in social justice and capitalist reforms to try to create compassionate and just society. And I grew up with a lot of that, going to conferences about that. Throughout my life, my business interests have been in making a difference in society and finding ways to do that. And when I got into venture capital consulting, and I've brought about $110 million of investment into New Zealand to fund New Zealand innovation companies. Some of that has been for social enterprise. And I was very interested in the using business as a way, commerce as a way of making the world a better place. You know, if you go back historically, there's three great institutions that humanity has created to try to improve society: governments, religions, and commerce. Because I was involved in commerce, I was interested in that, and I took on a lot of social enterprise clients and spoke to a lot of social enterprise investors and what's involved in the investment area here. I became an Akina mentor, and I've run a couple of social enterprises myself. I've been running a social enterprise in South Auckland for the past 4 years. And I've also done a lot of fundraising for charity. So I've raised, in addition to the venture capital work I've done, I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for New Zealand charities as well. So this is an area which I've been interested in quite some time. And I'm actually looking at going forward to specialize in consulting to support New Zealand social enterprise, and instead of just general business, but specifically social enterprise.
Lenny, you just mentioned the term Akina. What is Akina?
The Akina Foundation is a government initiative to support social enterprise. I was one of the mentors in that program as well.
So now we've heard a little bit about your background. Tell us, what is social enterprise? What is it, or maybe what is it not?
Well, it's a good question. And I think there's some really important things to understand about why the definition is important. So social enterprise was originally defined as an enterprise that has both a sustainable business model and a social purpose, and where the social purpose takes priority over profits. With that, the definition actually becomes very important, because one of the models that I put forward in a publication many years ago is to look at industry on a continuum. And I put on the left-hand side, I put the dishonorable business, the kind of business that is profit at all cost. They don't care what the implications of the way they do business are. All they're interested in is getting a profit. All the way on the right-hand side, you have a pure charity. They have no interest in making a profit, but they've got a social purpose, and that's what they're there for. In the middle is not a social enterprise. In the middle is a normal good business. Well, what should be a normal good business, a business that delivers a good quality product or service that people actually want, tries to do it in a reasonable and fair way, and they make money at it. Somewhere on the right-hand side between the normal business in the middle and the pure charity is this thing called a social enterprise, where you're delivering something that not just a product that people want or need, but something, the product or service you're delivering somehow uplifts society. Unlike the charity, you're not requiring donations to do it. So you're in this in-between space. The importance of this is, on the left-hand side, we need to be aware of greenwashing. People trying to redefine what is social enterprise so they can say, be nice to us, buy our product because we're doing good, so to speak. But actually, they're just greenwashing what they do to get more money from people. Okay? So it's important that we understand the definition is not just anybody with a business that has a nice product, or it's not just somebody giving a little bit back for a corporate social responsibility. On the other hand, it's not a pure charity. This became really apparent when talking to social enterprise investors. And social enterprise investors are normally wealthy philanthropists. They're people who have money for whatever reason, and they like giving a lot of money to charity. The problem is that they see that there's a fixed pool of money available to donate to charity. They're eager to find ways of getting more money into the pool available to uplift society. Charity is good, but what else can we do? Social enterprise is this grand idea where actually let's create a business that by its very nature lifts society. And actually they make money at it. So they might need a little bit of help getting started. Once we get them started, they actually become self-sustaining. We don't need to keep putting the money in. So the Cancer Society, you need to keep putting money in every year. They're a pure charity. But if you wanted to develop something to support cancer where you were selling products and looking at ways of doing it, and where, let's say, a company that made orphan drugs for rare cancers, there's not enough money in the drugs for the big pharmaceutical companies to make a profit. They charge money for the drugs, so they actually make a profit. It funds the work that's being done to create and deliver these orphan drugs. They don't need to make big profits, so they don't have to focus on only the drugs that are for the major cancers to make lots of money for everybody. They can focus on things that, well, in a good year it might make money, in a bad year it might lose money, but they're delivering the things that people need there. And that would be
what do they do when they lose money? Isn't that a risk, like
yes,
with other business?
And social enterprise investors understand that, particularly for a company like the orphan drug companies, pharmaceuticals are a kind of product that has a lot of money required to get them through testing and into market. That means there can be big losses when things don't work. There are actually international aid agencies which will top up the fund when one of those happens. So if an orphan drug company were to invest in a drug that was to get it through clinical trials and it didn't make it, they've lost all that money and they don't make anything. But they're not making big profits to cover that. So there are investors and agencies that do help out with that. And that's an archetypal social enterprise, is a company where they're more interested in getting those orphan drugs for the rare diseases that the big pharmaceutical companies can't afford to take that risk. They have to make a profit for their shareholders. Who's going to take these drugs forward? Some guy in a university has discovered this product, but now there's $1 billion worth of clinical testing required to get it into the market, to get it approved to be used on people. And that's a social enterprise domain.
Couldn't that be something that the government supports? Isn't the government a sort of social enterprise?
There's two different questions there, and I can't answer them both at the same time. So yes, that is something that governments put a lot of money into. And so governments often will provide the support to get social enterprise over the line. Most social enterprises are small enterprises where they need a little bit of money to get them over the line, self-sustaining. There are some big institutions like the orphan drug companies where on a good year, they make money, and occasionally they need some support. And so there are government agencies that are there to back that up. That's fine. Government is not really social enterprise. government shares the costs of things that everyone benefits from. So, for instance, people don't like to talk about it, but cars are very expensive to operate. And the only reason we can afford to drive cars is because we've all pooled our money together and invested in massive infrastructure to build roads so we can all get around in cars. Now, if somebody hadn't spent all that money on those roads, we couldn't drive our cars. So cars are extremely heavily subsidized by the government. Your individual car is not subsidized, but your ability to use it is subsidized. Schools are another example. Hospitals are another example. These are things that are bigger than individuals that the government invests in for all of us. And it's why we pay taxes. If you go back to old-fashioned, the early days of capitalism when they were first developing it, and believe it or not, capitalism has not existed forever. The concept arose out of some thinking in the 1700s from the Enlightenment and was really brought together in the 1800s. And capitalism, the original idea was to create, the original idea was actually on the back of this new field of looking at everything from a scientific lens, and this new field of behavioral science and human psychology. And capitalism takes the assumption that the human organism is primarily motivated by preservation of self. So then the people designing capitalism asked, how can we harness the energy of this primal urge of all humans to focus it on in a way that creates a better society for all of us? Okay, because left to its own devices, everybody seeking all that they can get, seeking for themselves, basically puts us all in battle with each other, and it creates hoarding and all kinds of problems that really don't help anybody. So the idea was to create a system that would harness this. And the original idea was that if you sell a good quality product or service that people want or need, you can make money. And if you deliver it to market efficiently and effectively, you can become wealthy. That was really all capitalism was at the beginning. So this company in the middle that's what they do. They deliver a good quality product or service that people want or need. They deliver it well. They might give a little bit back to the community and corporate social responsibility, things like that. And that's the one in the middle. Somewhere off on the right, you've got people who basically they take the idea of a good quality product or service that is also uplifting of society, something that really builds the whole society up. And then they put the notion of the profit, which in corporate law, the company is required to have a primary function is to deliver profits to the shareholder, to the owners. That's the primary purpose of a business in corporate law, unless stated otherwise in the Constitution, which you have to specify. Okay? So the social enterprise says, actually, we're willing to take lesser profits to serve our social mission. Notice that you don't make no profit. We're willing to risk making no profit to serve our social mission, like the orphan drug company. They're not there to make no profit. They're there to actually make a profit.
So they are purpose driven, of a purpose that is not necessarily financial.
The business law is very clear. The primary purpose of an ordinary business, unless stated otherwise in the Constitution, is to create profits for the owners. A social enterprise, you have stated that the primary purpose is the social mission, and the profits to the owners are secondary. When the government agencies identify that you're not trying to make a profit and you're just looking at your social mission, then they hold you to a much higher standard to be able to get any funding anymore. When the investors find out that you're just sucking more money away from their favorite charities to run a badly run charity, they blacklist you and you don't get anything from anybody. Okay, so you need to be clear that the social purpose is primary, but the profit remains secondary. And this is important because these social enterprise investors And whether you're talking about government agencies that have grants, or you're talking about donors who have big pools of money to put in, or you're talking about people who want to buy shares in your company, all these people who want to put money in, they're looking for somebody who's running, they're looking for people who are running a business that both uplifts society and makes a profit.
When the social enterprise makes a profit, where does the profit go to? Does it go to the development for the next year, or where does it go to? Is that in the constitution?
That's the choice of the social enterprise. So some of the profits should go back to the owners, to be fair. In fact, in a good social enterprise, you should be able to get healthy running a social enterprise. Your owners should get dividends. Imagine that, a world where you got rich and got shareholder dividends for doing the right thing, for being a good person. Then think about that for a second. Actually, I want you to ask you another question. Imagine a world where that didn't sound so ridiculous. Think about the world we're in, where I say this idea of a world where you get healthy by doing good. And you laugh. And I'm sure other people will too, because it sounds so far-fetched. Imagine a world where that just didn't seem so far-fetched.
It reminds me that you also have a specialty in faith and management. You contributed to a book about faith in management. I can't remember the exact title,
yes.
But I think that faith-based organizations or value-based organizations are, the majority of people at least, are seeking exactly that, to maybe not become wealthy, but to live a good life and at the same time do something good.
Yes, and I think this is the dream of social enterprise. Social enterprise, the social enterprise undertaking is seeking to do more than just run a business that does something that upholds a social purpose. The whole movement is about changing the way we relate to each other, so that the whole concept of commerce is uplifting. You know, going back to those three great institutions: government, religion, and commerce. A philosophy question, which you can put for debate in a philosophy course or philosophy discussion group, is which of these three has created the most good for humanity, and which of these three has created the most harm for humanity? Now, I've run that discussion in different countries, in different decades, and with different social groups of people. What I find really fascinating is that the answer shifts depending upon the current time, the time that you're in, and the people you're speaking to. And all three, people make a good argument for all three on both sides. So religion has there are times when people feel religion has delivered the most good, and there are times when people feel religion has delivered the most harm into humanity. There are times when people feel that government has done the most good, and when government has done the most harm. There are times when people feel that commerce has done the most good, and when commerce has done the most harm. So each of them has been argued for on both sides of the fence at different times and by different people. And it's great when you start the debate with a group of people, and you've got different people in the group arguing for all six positions. It's fascinating to watch. But really, what we want is a society that works. That means a government that predominantly delivers benefit to society. That means religion that predominantly delivers benefit to society. And that means commerce that predominantly delivers benefit to society. So in my work, my religious work, leading services and in the interfaith community, I'm very interested in helping to uplift people with spirituality. And in my work in business, I'm very interested in uplifting people with commerce, harnessing the power of commerce to care for people.
And I think that when you look back in the history, the philosophers, they were often religious and in commerce and in science, and there was more, like when you look at Newton or so, they were connected with different fields. It was not separated as it is often today, where somebody is either religious or in business or in government. So this, you're bringing back all the different fields and looking at it from different lenses at the same time.
So our modern Western looking at it sees your body and your mind, and maybe takes into account your soul. The traditional Maori way of looking at it wants to look at when you're looking at the human well-being, it's your body and your mind, but also your lineage and your spirituality. If you look at that kind of focus that appears in virtually it appears in every indigenous culture and every ancient culture that I've looked in. But those other esoteric aspects, the spirituality and the ancestral lineage, are very demonstrably or conspicuously missing in the modern Western view. So yes, I do believe there's an importance in bringing in spirituality into the way we do business. And I think going back to social enterprise, the point of social enterprise is to create business that is caring for people. If you put that in strict capitalist terms, it goes back to the concept of understanding what is value and what is wealth, and why those are different, and why it's so important to keep those different. Value was originally defined as basically the stuff you need to care for people and the planet. So another way of looking at it, defining value, is what would you care about if the whole world there was a global upheaval, there were no more governments, no more shops to spend your money in, what would you still care about? Those are the things that are real value. Commerce should be delivering value, those stuff we need to care for people. And commerce doesn't, so if you look at the old model, the conventional model of the business model, you have create value, deliver value, capture value. You don't capture value, you get money back. That's wealth. There's no value for the work for anyone in that. You can spend that on something that you value, but if I give you $1 million of non-negotiable currency, you have money, but you can't get anything that you want with it. It's what you want to get with the money that has value, and the money is not value. So social enterprise tries to look at changing this triangle to companies create value. They deliver food. They make food. They deliver value. They deliver food to people who are hungry. And they capture wealth. So now you've separated the concept of what is value and what is wealth. And this is really important because our current society is so focused, because we've confused these two, we're focusing on, our current society glorifies the creation of wealth as if that is an objective. But that doesn't actually help anybody. If I feed 1 million people, I've helped somebody. If I have $1 million in the bank, nobody cares but me.
I think that this is another discussion worth regarding value, because the term has been used in different ways, and I think also there are some of these misunderstandings are done on purpose, so in order to avoid the word costs or to avoid the word price, or so. I think that we can continue our conversation and do another time about value and see it also in the connection with the management and faith. And I think that's really important. Thank you so much, Lenny, for coming to join us in the interview.
Thank you very much.